This is the IOA Podcast, a space for truth, tenderness, and becoming whole, one breath at a time. Welcome back, everyone, to the IOA Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Malaika, and this is a space where we heal loudly and we live softly. Now, I'm going to do something a little different today and say the hard part first because I am full and I don't think I can carry it all the way to the close of this episode. And this is it. This is the season finale. Last episode of season 2. This will be the last time we will gather together like this for a few weeks. And I wanted you holding this hour, knowing exactly what it is. If you're new here, you picked a whole season finale to walk in on. And honestly, I think it is good timing. Come on in, find a seat. There's definitely room for you at this table. And if you have been walking with me week after week, all the way to here, thank you. And I don't have a bigger word than that one, so I'm going to let that small one carry all of it. Before we begin, let me do a little housekeeping because, again, it's the same thing I do every single week, but this week it actually matters more because we're about to head into a break and I want to stay connected right through into the break and the start of season 3. So if this show has met you somewhere this season, I've got my 3 quick asks. You know them by now if you listen regularly. First, follow or subscribe wherever you're listening, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, or anywhere else that podcasts live, so that the whole back catalog of this season stays close to you over the break. Second, if you are a Apple Podcast subscriber, leave a 5-star review with one honest sentence because reviews are how brand new listeners decide whether or not to trust us with their time and whether or not this is a good resource. And third, share this finale with somebody who's been tired all the way down, somebody who needs to hear that healing is not one more thing they're failing at. That is community care in action. Remember, all of our platforms are always linked in the show notes. The Substack companion to this episode is live. And this week, our paid subscribers are going to have a homecoming practice waiting for them, one that gathers this whole season into a single rhythm that you can carry through the break. And I'll tell you more about that and about how we can stay together over the last part of this summer when we get to the close. All right, so let's get into it. Like I said, I've been carrying this one since the very beginning of the season. When I planned it out, I wanted to be able to hand it to you carefully. I wanted to progress you into this episode. And it's the last thing that I'm going to get to say to you that is brand new for a while. And I would like to not let this moment be fumbled. All right. So let's get into our opening and our framing. So this is episode number 40. The title is simply Healing as Liberation and what it means to come home to yourself. That's the full title. I want to start by telling you the truth about the moment that we're ending this season in, because I don't think, honestly, it's a gentle one. This has been a season and honestly a stretch of years marked by some very particular kind of tiredness. And it's not the tiredness of a long day. This has been the tiredness of a long error. There's been backlash against so much of what people fought and bled for, a sense that the ground keeps shifting under our feet. And underneath all of that, there's kind of a spiritual disorientation, a feeling of not quite knowing where home actually is anymore. So many of you have written to me or given comments about it this season in different words and different ways, but always what I'm seeing is the same ache. I'm so tired. I don't feel like myself. Into all of that exhaustion, the world just keeps trying to sell us a version of healing that only makes it worse. Because the world will tell you that healing is a project, you go into it as another to-do list item. It'll tell you healing is a brand, something that you need to perform. It'll tell you that if you had just tried a little bit harder and bought the right thing, that you'd finally arrived at some polished, finished person who never struggles again. And I talked about this a lot in episode 39. And I want you to say, or want you to hear me say right here at the top of this last episode together in this season, that is a lie. I don't have any other poetic way to say that. It's a lie. And it is an exhausting lie, if we're being honest. And I refuse to send you all into the rest of the summer still carrying this with you. The reason being is because healing is not self-optimization. Healing is not a personal brand. Healing, the way we've practiced it all season long, the way we have talked about it, the way I have tried to give you foundation for, is about liberation. Healing is freedom. And more than anything else, it's coming home to yourself. So coming home to yourself, I want you to sit with that concept, sit with that visual, sit with that phrase for just a second, because it's the heart of everything we're doing today and have done on this show. Not becoming somebody new. That is not the goal. Not fixing broken parts until you're finally acceptable. It's coming home to yourself, returning to the self that has always been there underneath. And it's been underneath all the things that have been happening to you. It's been underneath what the world has told you to be. It's underneath all the exhaustion you feel. It's underneath the performing and the bracing that you do. Healing as a homecoming is important because it's not about renovation. Everything we've done this season has been quietly leading us to this point. And I want you to think about the road that we've walked in the 20 episodes for season 2. We began with beginning again without shame. So learning that healing was never meant to be done alone. Coming home to the body, sitting with grief until it taught us something. Making joyful noise without waiting on permission. Telling the truth about our money, about our trauma, about love and the limits that we have. We talked about stillness, the patterns that we've inherited. We talked about creativity as medicine. And then just last week, we talked about the freedom of healing without needing to be perfect at it. Every one of those was a step. And the path was always leading us here. It was leading us to the door of your own self. So this finale is honestly for everybody who walked this whole season with me or who just showed up. It's for the ones who are tired all the way down, tired in a place that sleep doesn't seem to reach. It's for the one who's been performing healing for everybody else and hasn't felt like themselves in longer than what they really want to admit. It's also for the one who is finally quietly ready to come home to themselves. If any of that lives in you, I want you to stay with me. Let this last episode of this season be yours. Today, we're going to walk through 4 things. And, I always like to lay out kind of a outline of what we're going to talk about. Number 1, what liberation-based healing actually is and why in the world that we're currently living in, this one, you are not the thing that's broken. 2, the myth that healing means that you're arriving, being fixed, or being finished. 3, what our people, what Black people, what the diaspora have always known about coming home. A self rooted in community and rooted in lineage. And 4, always the practice, the eye of pause, as the daily homecoming plus an integration that gathers this whole season into one rhythm that you can carry with you through the break. Now, this is not a finale that ties everything up in a bow and tells you the work is done. So if that's what you came here for, I can't help you there. That would be its own kind of lie, and I'm not into that. Healing has to be honest. This is root system work, and we know that root system work is a continual process, and we're going to approach it one last time for this season. So it is about the slow, quiet reclaiming of the one self that you've been leaving out of your own healing, the part of you that has not been honestly approached, which, if we're being honest, happens to be the essence of who you actually are. So let's begin this work. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back after this break. Hold on just a second. So, welcome back. And I want to start off here. I want to name and demystify something today because the word liberation often gets used a whole lot. And you don't feel it. It's felt very little. And I want it to be something that you actually can hold in your hands and it be tangible and felt. And I'm saying this as a psychologist who has sat with a great many people trying to be free. And for a long time, the field that I trained in actually measures healing mainly one way. And the way it does that is symptom reduction. Did the anxiety go down? Did the sadness lift? And this does matter. The relief does matter because that is why a person comes into care. And I would never wave away the easing of suffering. But symptom reduction is not the same thing as being free. And I had to wrestle with that and understand and rationalize that for myself. You can get a person's symptoms all the way down and still leave them living a very small, braced, obedient life. You can teach somebody to cope beautifully with the conditions that should never have been theirs to cope with in the first place. But even with that, that is not liberation and that is not healing. So here's a distinction that I want you carrying out in this season of your life. There's a difference between coping and being free. Coping is learning to survive inside the things that are hurting you. Being free is going to ask you a deeper question. Not just can you manage this, but who would you be if you weren't organized around surviving? Coping keeps you functional, keeps you moving forward. Liberation asks what you're functional for. Why are you really here? Real healing wants you to be free. There's language in my field for a piece of this, and I feel like it belongs to you too. And I've used this and talked about this in past episodes. It's called post-traumatic growth. For years, the whole conversation was about post-traumatic stress, about the wound, about the symptoms, and that was necessary work. But researchers started noticing something. Our elders could have told them this for free. They knew that some people don't just recover from what happened to them. They're in some way remade by it, almost like a phoenix, right? They come through carrying a deeper sense of what actually matters. Now, that doesn't mean that the wound was good, and it doesn't mean that we're grateful for what harmed us. It really is just saying that a human being can not only survive the fire, but come out the other side of it more themselves than they were before. The goal was never just to stop bleeding. The goal was to come home more whole than the world actually expected you to. And here's the reframe underneath all of this. The one I need you taking into this break with you in a world that is unjust, in a world that is exhausting, in a world that is relentless, is that you are not the thing that is broken. The conditions are. So much of what gets called your anxiety or your depression, your inability to keep up, is a sane response to insane, and I mean insane circumstances. It's a body telling the truth about the world that's asking way too much of you. And once you really understand that, healing stops being about quietly adjusting yourself to fit the thing that's harming you. Liberation-based healing doesn't ask you to make peace with your own diminishment. It asks you to come home to a self that was never the problem to begin with. So let me tell you about somebody, and I want you to hear this the way I always offer these as composite details, changed and blended for privacy, clearly. I worked with someone a while back who was, by every measure that my field uses, doing well. So their symptoms had gone down, and we talked about symptom reduction. Their sleep had come back. Everybody around them kept saying how much better they seemed. And they were, if better, just means that the acute pain had finally quieted itself. But they lived like someone braced for a sound or a crash. They kept their life very small on purpose and kept their once modest, kept their voice down, not drawing a lot of attention because staying small had once kept them safe. And nobody had ever given them a reason to stop doing that. They were coping beautifully. They were not free, but they were coping beautifully. And then one afternoon, they said something that I have not forgotten that has stayed with me. They said, I think I've been trying to heal so that I'll finally be acceptable. So then my question to that, and most clinicians' question would be, the follow-up question would be, acceptable to whom? And that got them to be very quiet and very still, because underneath all of it was a self that had been waiting a long time just to be allowed to come home. They wanted to be able to come home, that self did, without having to earn it, without having to be finished or a finished product first. And so I share this because I think a great many of us are living a quieter version of it right now. We've made ourselves manageable, and manageable not just to ourselves, but to the world around us. We've gotten very good at surviving conditions we should never have had to survive in the first place. And then we turned around and had the nerve to call it healing. And liberation says gently, you're allowed to want more than being manageable. You don't have to earn your way home. Home is not a reward for finishing this work. Home is the ground the work has always been trying to return you to. So in the language of my book, Rooted in Resilience, A Journey to Collective Healing, this is the chapter that I call the bloom. And if you notice throughout this season, we've been hitting the same chapters from different angles. And I chose that image on purpose because, like I've said in previous episodes, a flower doesn't bloom by becoming a different flower. It blooms by becoming fully what it was already intended to be. The bloom isn't an improvement on the seed. It is the seed. It's kept, it's tended, it comes all the way into its full self. To bloom is to come fully into yourself, to open up in your own color, not a color that someone told you would go over better. Your color. That's what liberation-based healing is for. Not to make you into somebody else, but to let you bloom into the fullness of who you've quietly been this entire time. So I want us to take another break. And when we come back, we are going to talk about the myth of arriving. We will be back in just a second. Welcome back, everyone. So let's jump back into it. I want to name a myth one last time because, again, it runs underneath this whole idea of healing, and almost none of us were ever taught to question this. And it's the myth that healing means arriving, that one day you'll be fixed, that there's this finish line somewhere where you become permanently at peace. Done with the hard days, you're healed, you're past that tense version of yourself forever. And underneath that one, a second myth is quietly existing that's just as heavy. And that second myth is that liberation is a private achievement. It's a summit that you climb alone. Plant your own little flag on top of it by yourself. And I understand why we believe it, but I've sat with enough people and lived enough of my own life to tell you the truth. No one arrives. There is no finish line. There's no ticker tape that you're going to run through. And the people that I know who are the most free are not the ones who stopped struggling. They're the ones who stopped believing that the struggle meant that they had failed. So let me offer you this reframe. The last big one, I feel like, for this season. Healing is not arriving. Healing is coming home again and again and again. It's a practice of return. So that means that you will leave, because we all do. The world pulls us out of ourselves daily. It pulls us out of character. It pulls us farther away from who we are at our core. And healing is the daily, lifelong practice of coming back. You're not arriving once, you're returning always. And I want to give you the science underneath that, because you shouldn't have to take it on faith, and because it's honestly one of the most hopeful things that I feel like I know. There's a name for what's happening in your brain when you come back to yourself over and over again in small, ordinary ways. It's called neural repatterning. And I'm really excited about this because I've been doing a professional development training on this for certification. And what neural repatterning is basically saying is that your brain runs on pathways, and the ones it travels the most becomes the one it reaches for first. So the same way a path across a field gets worn in by the feet that keep crossing it, everything you survived wore a path. It made you brace, scanning the room, shrinking before anybody even asked you to. Now, those are not character flaws. Those are just the well-traveled roads that your nervous system built because they kept you alive. And they're very deep because you've walked them so many times. So here's the hopeful part. Your brain does not stop making paths when the danger ends. It keeps making them your entire life in response to whatever you practice. So every single time you take one honest breath instead of bracing yourself, every time you tell the truth instead of performing healing, every time you come back to yourself after you've wandered off, you are laying down road. It may be faint at first. It's not going to be as deep as what you've already created as pathways. It will be faint the 50th time you do it. And then one day you take the new road without even deciding to do that. And that is where what it feels like when the pattern has actually changed. So hear what that means about this practice of return. The repetition is not evidence that you're failing to arrive. The repetition is the mechanism. It's the engine. You're not coming home again and again because you're bad at staying. You're coming home again and again because that is exactly how a path gets worn in. Every return is a footfall. Now, I want to be careful with the word building because I am not telling you to build a new self. Stay with me, okay? Because this is the heart of what we're talking about here. The part I most want you to hear, because it changes everything, is that you do not come home to a self you have to rebuild first. You're coming home to a self, again, that was already there, whole, underneath what happened to you. This is what the optimization story gets exactly backwards. It tells you you're a broken thing that has to be assembled into wholeness through effort. But you are not a broken thing being assembled. You are a whole thing that got covered over. You got buried through what you survived. You got hidden under what you were told to be. The wholeness isn't the destination. It's what's already there waiting under the debris. So coming home is not about construction. It's about excavation. It's about clearing away what isn't you so that what has always been you can breathe again. And I want to say something honest about what that excavating actually feels like and what it means, because I don't want to make it sound like it's peaceful and serene, because it might not be. Clearing away what isn't you is not a gentle afternoon. It just isn't. Some of what got laid on top of you was put there by people who loved you and just didn't know better. And some of it you laid down yourself on purpose because it kept you safe in a room where safety was scarce. So when you start lifting it, there's grief in it. You're not only uncovering yourself, you're saying goodbye to the version of you who survived by staying covered. And then they deserve to be thanked before you set those things down. Thank yourself for getting through to this point. That's why I say the work is going to go slow. It's not because you're behind, but because you're being careful with something that literally has been what kept you alive. And so now I'm going to dig into that second myth a little bit deeper. The one that liberation is a private individual achievement, because that is probably one of the loneliest lies that we can ever carry. In our culture, and I mean by mainstream current culture, we are taught to heal alone, to treat our freedom like it's a solo project. But no one actually gets free alone. Your healing is bound up with the healing of the people who are around you, the people who came before you, and the people who are coming after you. Liberation not only is ongoing, but it is collective. It's something that we do together, or we don't really do it at all. The freest people that I know are not the ones who climbed out of their situations alone. They're the ones who reached back. They are the ones who reached next to them. And I want you to notice what that does to the pressure that you're carrying. If liberation is collective, then it was never all on just you. You're not required to get free by yourself on this private schedule with no one to help you. You get to be one of a pair of hands in a long line of hands. Some days you'll be the one reaching back. Some other days you'll be the one who was reached for. Both of those are part of the work. So there's a nature image that I return to that I think exemplifies this. Home isn't a destination you reach once and then you finished with it. It's more like water returning to the sea. The water rises, falls as rain, runs back down through the hills, returns to the ocean, and then it does it all over again. It's always coming home. And that is not a failure on the part of water to stay put. That's the water being exactly what it's designed to be. In my book, Rooted in Resilience, again, the closing movement of the book is what I call closing reflections. And this is the note it ends on. Not you have arrived, not you are finished, not you are fixed, but you are already whole beneath what happened to you. And home is not a place you reach once. It's a practice you take up daily. And you will never, ever have to do it alone. Part of the work of healing is releasing the fantasy of the finish line and learning instead to love the practice of actually returning. You'll be coming home to yourself for the rest of your life. That's the best way I can say that. It's not bad news, actually. That is the freedom that comes with this practice. That's the freedom of understanding what coming home actually looks like. Let's take another break, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about ancestral wholeness. We will be back in just a second. So I want to open up this segment and thank you for staying with us and welcome back to the podcast with talking about the ancestral component about coming home. Coming home is ancestral because our people have always understood the self as something that's rooted in community and is in cosmology held inside a web that's far larger than just any one person could actually be. So across West African cosmology, and those of you who have read my book know that that's the foundation of what I write in, everywhere the diaspora carried it, the self was not a solitary, sealed off individual the way modern Western culture keeps insisting. The self is basically a node in a living web of relationship. And it's held together by community, by lineage, by the ancestors, by the divine or whatever higher power you worship. There's a word that carries this from Southern Africa, and it's kind of traveled all over the world now, and it's Ubuntu. This word is used a lot. It's the heart of usually getting translated to say, basically, I am because we are. I love this concept. I use it a lot. And I'm a person, basically, is what Ubuntu was saying, is I'm a person through other people. What it's basically meaning is that coming home to yourself is not turning inward and away from everyone. It's remembering that you were never a single separate thing to begin with. So to come home to yourself is to come home to the we you've always been part of. There's another word that I have to give you before this season ends because I feel like it's the whole shape of what we've actually been doing. And I've used this word before, and it's Sankofa. Anyone knows, you knew I was going here. It comes to us from the Akan people, often carried by the image of a bird turned backwards, reaching to retrieve something from behind it. And the meaning is something like, it is not wrong to go back and get what you left. Reaching back into your lineage, into what your people knew, retrieving what's worth keeping. That's not living in the past. That is how you carry the past forward in a wise way. And all season, in a way, we've been practicing Sankofa. We've been going back to retrieve the body, the grief, the joy, the truth, the freedom our people already knew. And we're carrying it forward into a world that has forgotten it. And here is the part that kind of undoes me a little every single time when I think about this. The longing for liberation that moves you did not belong or begin with just you. It's actually older than you. The ancestors longed for this freedom. They wished they could have had it. They prayed for it in rooms that you and I will never see. They wanted a freedom most of them never got to touch, and that longing did not die with them. It came down epigenetically. It's moving through you right now. So when you reach for your own liberation, you're not being selfish and you're not starting from nothing. You are the freedom that your ancestors prayed for on the knees that you never saw. Your healing isn't only yours, it's also theirs coming to pass. It may be late, but it's still coming. And I want to be specific about what that means for you practically, because it's not just a beautiful sentence and a beautiful sentiment. It means your rest is not indulgence. Your rest is the inheritance. Somebody worked in a way that made rest impossible so that rest could become possible somewhere down the line, and you are the somewhere down the line. It means your joy isn't frivolous. Your joy is the evidence. It means that the fact that you get to sit here on a Tuesday with me thinking about your own inner life with the door closed and the lights on and nobody's permission required is a thing that was longed for out loud by people who never got to have it. So when the guilt comes for you this summer, and it will, when you catch yourself apologizing for resting, I want you to remember whose prayer you're answering by doing it. And I have to name the other side of this. The other side of this inheritance, and I want to say this gently because it's real, a lot of us were taught by history and by hard necessity to survive alone, to trust no one, because people have betrayed us, because there was no one safe to share the weight with, or because people were the reason why we were carrying the weight. Now, that was not a character flaw. That was a wound, and a wise person that's forged in conditions that made solitude safer than trusting others goes to this mode because it's self-protective. But you don't live in only those conditions anymore. And coming home means letting yourself be held again slowly by the people who've proven themselves safe and the lineage and the source that were always meant to hold you. So in the book, this is the very first chapter, the one I call The Root, what Aya actually teaches us. And it feels right that we end this season where the whole thing began, because the Aya fern doesn't stand up out of nothing. It rises out of a root system it did not build and ground held together by everything that grew and died there before it. You're coming into your own color, but in a garden that your ancestors actually planted. Coming home to yourself, coming home to your people was never two different things. It was never meant to be two different things. They were always the same homecoming. And so I think this is a good place for us to take a break, because when we come back, we're going to get into the practice. We're going to get into the Aya pause moment for this episode and then close out the show. So stay tuned. Be back in just a second. Welcome back, everyone. And let me put something in your hands, because a beautiful idea will not survive a hard Wednesday or me sending you into the rest of the summer without something to hold on to. So we know the foundation of the show is the Aya pause. And if you're new here, I'm giving you this tool as a way to move through this journey when you're away from me, and just a great practice to have. The Aya pause is not a break that you have to earn. And I say this all the time. You earn it after, or believe that you earn it after your to-do list is finally done. What the Aya pause actually is a breath that you take on purpose in the middle of life that's trying to take it from you today. And today I want to give it its truest name, the one that we kind of been circling all season and repetitively talking about. This Aya pause is the daily homecoming. It's the breath by which you come home to yourself. So here's how we take one. I want you to do it with me right now because there's no better way to end this season than by coming home together. So wherever you are, put your feet flat on the floor, one hand on your chest, one hand on your belly. If you can, if you're driving and listening, please be safe and do this later. Breathe in slowly through your nose for a count of 4 and out through your mouth for a count of 6. You're going to let that exhale run a little bit longer than the inhale because physiologically, that's the breath that is telling your nervous system that it's safe to calm down. You're going to do this 3 times. So on the first breath, you notice where you are. On the second breath, you notice what your body is doing. And then on the third breath, you let one true thing rise up in you and you let yourself just be home in it for that moment. That's the eye of pause. It's 3 breaths, the whole homecoming process in miniature. Now, on top of that foundation, I want to give you something a little different for this finale. It's not a new practice to add to the things that I've given you so far because you know I'm not for that. It's about integration. So a single rhythm that kind of gathers everything together this season that I have taught us into one place of coming home. I'm calling it kind of the homecoming. And I feel like there's like 5 small movements, one for each thread that we've kind of woven through theme-wise all season. And you will do all 5 every day. So let it kind of be a menu to choose from, not a mandate, right? And remember what we just said about the pathways. None of these are going to feel like much is happening to you. They're not supposed to feel necessarily in the moment as if you have arrived, all right? What they are supposed to feel like is footfalls. You're wearing into the road, and that is allowing the groove or the new path to be established. So the first movement is the breath and the pause. It's the eye of pause or your daily doorway, the homecoming that you can do in 30 seconds. So we already talked about that. So before anything else, you come back to your body. Do your feet on the floor. Do the 4 in and 6 out, right? Everything else is going to grow out of that. The second movement is a small daily clearing of silence. That's the stillness that we've practiced. One window of real quiet, 5 minutes, if you can get it, with no input, just you and returning to yourself. This is where you get quiet enough to hear whether you're actually home or you are performing being home. The third movement is the bloom list. It's the celebration. That's the joy that we've practiced all season. Once a day, you name one thing, however small, that's blooming in you or around you. One thing worth celebrating without waiting on anybody's permission, because you cannot come home to a self that you only ever criticize. Homecoming includes delight, and that is important. The fourth movement is a protected boundary, and we've talked about this a lot this season. That's the love and the limits that we have practiced. So each day, keep one small boundary that protects your coming home. One edge that keeps the world from pulling you back out of yourself the moment that you get back out there. Boundaries, again, are not walls. They're not walls against love. They're the fences around the garden that you are finally tending and paying attention to and giving love. And then the fifth movement is an honest inventory. That's the truth telling that we've practiced all season. And at the end of the day, you ask yourself gently, without punishment and judgment, where did I leave myself today? And where did I come home? It's not to grade yourself. It's just to notice what is happening, because you cannot return to a place that you won't honestly look at. So feel how those 5 things move together: the breath, the silence, the bloom, the boundary, and the inventory. They're coming home to the body, to the quiet, to your own joy, behind a boundary that protects you, and by telling yourself the truth. That all together cohesively is the homecoming. The whole season kind of folded into this one rhythm that you can carry all summer when I'm not in your ears every Tuesday to remind you. And I want to give you one more thing, a small return ritual for those moments. this summer when you realize you kind of wandered way off from yourself, because you will, and we all do. When you notice you're not home, you don't need a whole practice. You need one honest sentence, and then you need one breath. And then that's when you go into putting your hand on your chest and saying quietly to yourself, I am coming home. Then you'll do your Aya pause after that. And that's the whole ritual. It's kind of like the door that you can open anywhere that you're at. You're basically saying, I'm coming home in one breath, and you're on your way back to being you. So here's what I'm asking you as we get ready to part for the rest of the summer and for this season. Make me one small promise and really make it to yourself, right? Promise me that you'll keep coming home, even after this season ends, even when I'm not here every week, and even when we get into the next season and move forward in this journey. The practice does not belong to this podcast. It belongs to you. The homecoming is yours now. Take it into the break. Keep returning again and again and again. All right. To the self that's been waiting on you all along. So I want to close you out and send you off. It's almost a little bittersweet, but before I let you go and before we close out this whole season together, I want to ask you this one question. Again, I always say, I don't want you answering it quickly. I want you to let it live in you. And it may take you for the rest of the summer long in order to do that. What does it mean to come home to yourself? And you don't have to have the answer today. In fact, I kind of hope you don't have the answer. I hope you carry that question through the break like a small light, and I hope it keeps opening for you a little more each time you take the breath. And remember who you already are underneath everything that you have survived and existed through. And now I got some people that I need to speak to directly one last time for this season. So to the one who has walked this whole season with me from the very beginning, to my listeners at WDJY in the city of Atlanta, I need you to know that I felt you here in this space every Tuesday. I imagine you being in your car or being in your kitchen, and you have kept me company through this loud and difficult year in our world. So thank you for staying. Thank you for coming back week after week to this one quiet corner. You're not a number to me. You are the whole reason why I built this podcast to begin with. To the one who's tired all the way deep down, tired in a place that sleep is not going to get to, I also see you, and I'm not going to tell you to push through, because that's the very lie that got you this tired in the first place. What I am going to tell you is that your exhaustion is not your failure. It's your body telling you the truth about a world that has asked too much of you. You're allowed to rest this summer. Please take time to rest. You're allowed to lay the burdens down, to lay that weight down. You do not have to earn your way into being home. You just need to come. And to the one who's finally coming home, I am so proud of you. And I don't say that lightly. It is a brave and quiet thing to stop performing for others, to stop optimizing, to stop trying to become someone acceptable, and to just turn back toward the self that was always there. You're not late. You're right on time. So welcome home. That door was never really locked. It was only waiting on you to remember the way back to it. So as we go out, here's what I want you carrying with you, not only at the end of this season, but going forward in general, not just this week, right? I want you to take it beyond. And what I want you to remember is this. Number one, healing is not self-optimization. It's not a brand. Healing is liberation, and it's coming home to yourself. Number two, in a world this unjust and this exhausting, and exhausting is not a strong enough word, you are not the thing that's broken. The conditions are. So your healing journey isn't about quietly adjusting to what's harming you. It is about remembering to return to who you actually are underneath that. Three, healing is not arriving. It's coming home. And remember, we're doing it again and again and again. And you are already whole beneath what has happened to you. There's no finish line. And that's the freedom of this. Not the failure, right? It's the freedom. Number four, liberation is not a private achievement. It's ongoing, and it is going to be collective, and you were never meant to do this by yourself. So you are the freedom that your ancestors prayed for. And then 5, the practice that I have given you, the Aya pause that I always give you, that homecoming Aya pause. Make sure that you go into the breath, the silence, the bloom, the boundary, and make sure you also have the honest inventory of what you are experiencing. And when you wander off, because we always do, put a hand on your chest, pay attention to your breath, and say, I am coming home. And then take one cleansing breath and keep returning. Keep doing this over and over again. Keep doing it all summer, all through this break, knowing that this is a space that you can continue to come back to because you're looking for liberation. So I'm a little like divided about this, but I want you to hear me. We will be back for season number 3. We will be starting in September on the first Tuesday of September. I believe it is the 1st, if I remember correctly. It may be the 2nd. It may be September the 2nd, but we will be returning for season number 3. In between that, there won't be any new content, but we will be coming back for season number 3. I've actually planned out seasons 3 and 4 as far as structures of what we're going to talk about and build on from a strategy standpoint. So I'm really excited. So please, please stay with the channel, stay with the podcast. Don't miss out on the bonus content that will be coming out between now and the beginning of September. And I want you to remember that this is a space that we have curated for us to be able to do this homecoming and for us to create a space for us to come back to again and again. As always, I am Dr. Malaika. I am your host. Remember that in this space, we heal loudly and we live softly together. And although the season is ending, the healing does not. Have a great rest of your week. Have a great rest of this summer, and I'll see you in season number 3.